What we're about to see is nothing short of extraordinary. Today we're watching the Mozart of chess, Magnus Carlsen, in a unique challenge. He's playing a chess match, and if that wasn't hard enough, not against one, but three opponents, all at the same time. These aren't just any opponents, they are formidable contenders in their own right. But Magnus, one of the greatest chess minds in history, is not just playing any regular game of chess, he's playing blindfolded, tracking 3 different games in his mind. Surely even Magnus can't beat this challenge. Magnus Carlsen, the chess prodigy who became the second youngest grandmaster in history at just 13, is no stranger to the spotlight. He drew with Garry Kasparov and defeated former world champion Anatoly Karpov, all at the tender age of just 13. But in this challenge, he faced a unique challenge that tested his legendary skills to the absolute limit. His opponents? First, we have Chris Flowers, a Wall Street financier with a deep love for chess, who played a key role during the financial crisis. Despite his wife's fluency in Swedish, Chris admits that his love for chess might be a one-way love after this challenge. In the middle is Paul Hoffman, the brilliant director of the Liberty Science Center, a Harvard summa cum laude graduate, author, and mathematician. Paul once found himself in a Libyan jail for his audacious chess playing, but he hoped Magnus would be less severe whatever the outcome. On the far right is Benga Akinagbe, an accomplished actor known for roles in The Wire and 24. He was just happy to be part of this wild test. Magnus, as we know, will be playing blindfolded. He will have just 9 minutes in total to play all 3 games, averaging 3 minutes per game. As the clock ticks, he will be visualizing and strategizing for 3 different boards in his mind, a feat that would be unimaginable for most. As he prepared for this historic showdown, Magnus was calm and focused. The boards were set, the blindfold was ready, and the world was watching. Let the games begin. In the hushed room, blindfolded and focused, Magnus Carlsen was playing a different kind of game on 3 separate chessboards. In each match, one strategy was clear. He aimed to control the center of the board. His knights were generally the first pieces to move outside of the pawn structures, stepping out like they were the lead actors in a play, claiming the spotlight in the middle of the stage. But Magnus wasn't using a one-size-fits-all approach. Against Chris, the Wall Street guy, his knights were bold and confrontational, challenging Chris's every decision. When playing Paul, the science whiz, Magnus used his bishops like snipers, their long reach helping to lock down that crucial central territory. The bishops are sliding out like they're late for a Sunday sermon. And with Benga, the actor, Magnus played it cool, holding his key pieces back like a suspenseful pause in a thriller, building tension and waiting for just the right moment to make a move. And don't forget, Magnus wasn't actually looking at any of the boards. He was seeing it all in his mind, like a movie playing in the dark. Each position a scene in this blindfolded epic. Despite the high drama, Magnus was the picture of calm, navigating the storm like it was just another day at the office. As the matches transitioned into the middle games, each board told a different story, like 3 distinct acts of a play. On board 1, Chris had advanced the majority of his pawns 1 row forward, creating a solid wall. Board 1 is like a tense family dinner. Everyone's lined up, but nobody's talking. Behind this line, his key pieces stood like generals behind their troops, forming a standoff-ish, almost defensive style of play that seemed to say, cross this line if you dare. Over on board 2, it's a proper duel, like 2 cowboys in a standoff, but with bishops instead of pistols. Both Magnus and Paul had suffered equal losses, their remaining pieces locked in a tense struggle for control of the board's vital center. It was anyone's game, a perfectly balanced scale that could tip with a single move. Meanwhile, board 3 was a blend of the scenarios unfolding on the other 2 boards. Here, Benga was playing it close to the vest, holding his pawns back in harmony with most of his key pieces. Despite a fair amount of losses on both sides, each player was jostling for that all-important central control, like dancers skillfully maneuvering for the lead in a tight tango. In this complex ballet of minds and moves, Magnus, blindfolded, was the conductor of this intricate play, seamlessly transitioning between these completely unique games, all playing out vividly in his imagination. On board 3, the atmosphere was thick with tension, but Magnus, ever the maestro, was composing a finale that would leave the audience in stitches. His queen had elegantly waltzed her way to h6 at the back of the board, declaring a bold check on Benga's black king. Meanwhile, Magnus's own king was as secure as a vault, swarmed by loyal pawns and a steadfast bishop, locked down like Fort Knox. His rook, positioned at e1, had the long, unobstructed view of a sniper, while his knight at c3 sat like a wise elder in the village square, calmly observing the unfolding drama. But beneath this seemingly tranquil scene, Magnus was winding up a spring-loaded trap. Venga, showing resilience, moved his king forward to f7, seemingly stepping out of danger and placing a rook to guard against Magnus's menacing queen. A brief sigh of relief, perhaps? Not so fast. With the finesse of a seasoned chess artist, Magnus advanced a pawn to e6, putting the king in check again. As if on cue, his knight pranced forward to d5, rechecking the king in a swift, elegant move. It was at this moment that Magnus, with a twinkle in his voice, announced,
"Mate to next move."
The room erupted in laughter at his audacious confidence. Venga's king, now more like a cornered cat than a regal monarch, retreated, but it was to no hope. Magnus's queen moved to h8, delivering a checkmate as elegant as it was decisive. The audience, still chuckling at Magnus's playful warning, erupted into applause for this masterful endgame performance. On board 1, the endgame was unfolding like a suspenseful thriller, where every second counted and the clock was as much of an opponent as Magnus himself. The board was a chaotic battlefield, pieces scattered like leaves after a storm. Magnus, ever the patient predator, was keeping his queen in reserve, like a secret weapon waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His opponent, sensing the lurking danger, played a cautious game. Their queen, usually a powerful force, was instead playing bodyguard to the king, darting back and forth across potential lines of threat like a nervous Secret Service agent. The turning point came like a sudden plot twist. Black moved the king forward to c7, leaving the queen exposed on the left-hand side of the board, her protective stance momentarily abandoned. This was the opening Magnus had been waiting for, and he didn't hesitate. Like a hawk diving for its prey, Magnus's queen soared across the board from a2 to f7, placing the now unguarded black king under a stern check. The opponent, feeling the walls closing in, glanced at the clock. A mere 13 seconds remaining. It was a moment of stark realization. With a resigned smile and the grace of someone acknowledging a masterful opponent, he extended his hand and declared,
"I resign." Board one, resign before I lose.
The audience, sensing the respectful surrender in the face of Magnus's relentless pressure, erupted into a warm applause. It was a resignation, but one that carried the weight of a hard-fought and respectful duel. On the final board, board 2, eyes centered for the concluding act of this chess drama. With victories on the other two boards secured, Magnus could now pour his full attention into this last duel. Doesn't sound like the kind of position you'd want to find yourself in against the champ. The clock was ticking down dramatically. Black had a mere 23 seconds left, while Magnus, the cool and composed Grandmaster, had a full minute to secure a swift third victory. The endgame here was a tense, methodical dance. For a time, it was a quiet exchange of pawn moves, like two duelists cautiously circling each other. Blades drawn, but not yet clashing. Key pieces were placed under threat, but neither player seemed willing to commit to a decisive strike. That is, until Black played queen to b6, suddenly placing Magnus's king under check on g1. Without missing a beat, Magnus slid his king right to h2, smoothly sidestepping the threat like a matador evading a charging bull. From there, the game returned to a slower rhythm, a series of pawn moves. Magnus was clearly eyeing the opponent's back row, aiming to promote a pawn and ratchet up the pressure on the stranded king. Then, in a moment as sudden as a snapped string, the clock was called. Time had run out for Black.
Time's up!
Confirming Magnus as the victor over his third and final opponent. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause as Magnus, with a triumphant and relieved smile, ripped off his blindfold. In that moment, he wasn't just a chess grandmaster. He had taken on 3 players and beaten them, one by one, all without laying eyes on a single board. Magnus Carlsen, ever the composed genius, clearly relished this unique challenge and navigated it with apparent ease. Unfazed and smiling, he hinted that with more time on the clock, he'd gladly welcome additional challengers. His secret? Keeping one game sharply and focused at any given moment, methodically conquering them one by one, rather than panicking about the chaos of juggling all 3 simultaneously. A true masterclass in focus and strategy.